What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. We discuss lifestyle and mental health content on this channel, and this episode is a part of the Mindfulness podcast series. So today we have a very special guest with us, Jason Freeman, and we are going to be talking about how to deal with anxiety.
Oh, shit.
Jason, thank you for coming on to the podcast. So I know there are a lot of adults and young adults watching this podcast struggling with anxiety. How would you recommend someone deal with the stress that they feel day to day? If they feel like anxiety creeps up when they're in a certain situation, may that be around other people or revolving around public speaking, or when they're around a specific person.
Well, I think the first thing is it's important to breathe. Remember to breathe. You know, you're just feeling a rush of chemicals. What makes you feel anxiety? I think it's important to just try to remain calm first and foremost.
I think that's good advice. So, if I were someone that suffered from social anxiety, and I know that I have to go to this public event for work or at school, or I'm getting ready for an exam, and I feel my hands clamming up and it's hard for me to breathe, what would you suggest?
It doesn't have anything to do with what's outside of you. You know what I mean? It's all inside you. It's kind of under your control. You're choosing to be anxious, right? Whether because you're used to it or because you're uncomfortable with a situation. What you really probably need to do is make yourself more comfortable with that situation so it becomes more of a normal thing, like an everyday thing. I think, you know, if you really want to, let's say, solve your anxiety problems, I think it's important to address it face forward and know what you're dealing with, which is just your fear of whatever situation that you're in.
That makes sense to start by dealing with that fear head on, as you're saying, just to get comfortable with the feeling of being uncomfortable.
It's like a fight or flight primordial response. So, you know, your choice is to run or to face it, you know. Yeah, reality pending. I mean, you might get slaughtered the first few times. That's just life. You know, you're going to have to learn to accept those kind of things. It doesn't mean you're any less of a person or you can't even view it as a failure. It's just like a learning experience, you know. You have to look at it that way, I think.
I like that. Trying to look at facing your fears as a learning experience. So as long as you decided to make that choice to put yourself in that situation where you can have the learning experience, then it's not a failure, no matter what the outcome is.
Right, because you're just familiarizing yourself with said situation, whatever it may be, you know. Not that I'm going to, but if I wanted to, you know, conquer my fear of the ocean, I would probably go like swim with some sharks or something. Not that I'm going to go do that, okay, but it's the same concept. Might get your toes nibbled at the first couple of times, but who needs toes?
So does it have to be that extreme? Like maybe something small, like going to the beach and dipping your feet in the water,
Yeah, you could start there.
or going out into the water and sitting on a boat and putting your feet in the water and having someone swim underneath you and nibble at your feet.
Yeah, that would be pretty scary. But yeah, things like that could work, I suppose.
I like that. Just to ease yourself into becoming more comfortable being uncomfortable. Baby steps.
Baby steps.
I like that. On the flip side of that, what happens when we don't deal with our anxiety from what you've seen?
It's hard to move forward, you know, if you're still struggling with let's say childhood anxieties or whatever, social anxieties, things are all developed when you're young. Uh, we're all kind of like big kids running around in adult uniforms, kind of. So I think that's a good way to look at it. Like, you have some shit that happened to you when you were a kid, and it set the tone for your whole life, even though you might not have realized it. And sometimes when you're an adult, you're like, oh, that was a long time ago. I'm over that. But are you? Are you over it? You know what I mean? Can you go around and be reminded of that circumstance and not be judgmental or not shade every experience with that fear or preconceived idea of what it is or what it should be? Now is not then. You're not the same fragile person that you were. It's time to address things in a new way, unless you're comfortable. In that case, you probably ain't listening to this talk that we're having anyway.
A lot of people, I feel like, that are watching this podcast right now are ready for something to change. And I think it's really powerful what you mentioned about being aware of what happened in the past that might be triggering the way that we're showing up in the present and the way that we might continue to show up in the future if we're not conscious of it.
I think it's pretty simple. I think people are just afraid to acknowledge it. We all know what fucked us up. It's not a secret to us. We're just in denial of it. It's like it's not hard to look back at your life and look at the things that were messed up, or how people had wronged you, or things that just happened that were out of your control, I guess. It's not hard to know what those things are. The hard part is admitting that it shaped you, and you need to, remold yourself in a way.
How would someone go about beginning to remold themselves? How would you encourage someone to begin to explore what happened in a healthy way that can help them to move forward?
You just have to acknowledge your fear. You know how you feel. Your feelings aren't random, right? You don't just walk into some weird place and start feeling a certain way. It's what's inside you. You know what I mean? What's inside your mind that's making you feel that way. So start with your fear. Whenever you're in a situation where you're anxious or scared, you just need to stop yourself. Maybe take a breath, like I said, and just wait a second instead of just being faced with that fear. You know what I mean? Just take a second. Why are you feeling this way? Because really you're just used to feeling that way, and you might even think it's normal. And so you just let it ride, but just stop it. Stop your fear and change your habits. And like we said earlier, you just push on through. Push past that fear. Just like when you're working out, you got to push past the burning feeling in your muscles that makes you want to quit, right? Talk to any muscle-bound person out there, and that's what they'll tell you. When you start doing it, you're weak and it hurts. At this point, what we're talking about, unfortunately, in a kind of a harsh light, you're emotionally weak because you've been damaged, right? And you haven't been exercising your emotional muscles, so you're frail and you're not going to be able to lift a whole lot, and you're going to smash your thumb a little bit, or whatnot. You just got to push through it, though. If you really want it, like that's what it really takes, is just saying to yourself that you're going to push through whatever anxieties that you have until it just becomes a non-issue.